Wow, what a nightmare this week has been. I mean, crazy.
It's just a nightmare.
And all the stuff that I was doing that wasn't as bad, it was because there was no business. There's nothing happening at my shop. It's like zero.
But now you're busy.
So now I'm actually busy at the store, and we had like 15 to 30 customers daily for the past 2 or 3 weeks.
That's fucking great, though.
But
you got to fit the podcast around it and stuff.
Well, that's the shit of it. You know, this is the thing I actually want to do.
Right. And, I mean, Lord knows I don't want to be working either.
No.
Stop fucking with the microphone.
I'm sorry.
It makes noise.
I know.
You're twitchy and it's making me fucking crazy.
All right, okay, ready? Let's do the
show.
Ready? Let's. And we're back.
Yeah.
Welcome to Recovering the Middle Ages, the podcast about two middle-aged suburban dads and their pursuit of life, love, and recovery. I'm Nat.
And I'm Mike.
And boy, do we have a show for you. Today on RMA, back with a vengeance from an unplanned dark week. And we welcome the one, the only, the world-famous and locally infamous Dopey Dave, the host of the podcast responsible for the paradigm shift in the way we think about addiction recovery and entertainment.
Give me a break.
Dopey is the podcast about drugs, addiction, and dumb shit. And we are proud to announce that he will be joining us via telephone today.
Today, in many minutes after we finish bullshitting about
we're going to bullshit a little bit. So visit us at middleagesrecovery.com. Find us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and more. Great reviews will be read on the show. So please, 5-star reviews and say something nice. Tell us your story by submitting it on middleagesrecovery.com, and you could hear your show on the show. You can hear your story on the show. New merch.
You could also be a guest on the show, apparently, according to Nat.
More likely, well, a guest. Maybe we'll do a call-in.
Yeah.
New merch is available. We have these awesome T-shirts that were made up by our number one, Jeff.
Jeff's the other one. The number one fan in Tacoma is other Jeff.
Well, I think about T-shirt Jeff is number one because he's made shirts for us and he's awesome. But I guess they're all awesome.
Yes, thank you, Jeff. Number one fan in Tacoma, by the way, has moved
to
another state.
Okay.
He put it in an email I completely forgot.
Which
you responded to.
I did I?
Do you remember where he moved to? Somewhere in the south. Some weird...
Abilamba.
Oh, really?
Amambla.
That's weird.
Amabalamba.
From... Wow.
The Slamma from Alabama.
From Washington State to the deep south.
I think so. But these shirts are cool. They're comfortable. They look sexy. Right now we're selling them just by message us, and we'll figure out a way to send a carrier pigeon to you to grab the money.
How's that for a system?
But we are working right now on getting a WooCommerce set up on our website, so it'll be very easy to buy stuff and, make orders. One thing, I'm kind of surprising you with this. We actually have a few your stories that have been submitted, and I wanted to let people know the kind of thing that we're getting, the kind of stories we get on our website.
I'm so shocked and
I've
surprised.
got a few. Why don't you just read them out loud? This is what we're getting on your story.
This one's from Catalina. Tell us your story. Morning. Care Dog Best. Personalized dog harnesses, all sizes from extra small to extra large. Easy off, on, and why am I doing an ad for this one?
All right, go to the next one. There's more. I think there's a better one. And
thanks, Catalina. Nice to know you're listening. Here we go from Fiona. Hey there. World's best neck massager. Get it now 50% off and free shipping. Welcome, wellness enthusiasts. That's us.
That's us.
Wow. Okay. So that's a good one.
And I think one more I printed out for you.
Tell us your story. Good day. Wear with intent. Live with purpose. Fairly priced sunglasses with high quality UV lenses. Awesome.
Those are some. That is some intriguing
great
stories.
Stuff that comes through the.
So, folks, this is what we get on our Tell Us Your Story form. So please give me something decent.
You know what I did get, and I had to reject about 2 weeks ago? I got a whole bunch of requests to join the private Facebook group by people that were like
clearly not real fans.
They did not answer any of the questions, and then you go to their Facebook profile, and there's nothing there.
There's
it's
nothing
just the whole
on.
thing is just clearly.
I mean, and that should tell you that we do screen the people who join our private.
Lightly. I just look to make sure they're an actual person. Is basically it.
I know, and I keep adjusting the mic. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm very nervous. I want to say that getting Dopey Dave on the show, when I first started thinking about a podcast and whether or not I could do it, it was definitely after listening to Dopey and basically being inspired that there could be a recovery-related podcast that wasn't just people telling their story, like the whole it's like I listened to a lot of podcasts when the pandemic first started. Dopey is the only one I still listen to, really, besides Rehab Confidential. I was listening to Share, Recovery Elevator, and the only one that has kept my attention, and there's a number of reasons for that, is Dopey. And it was always a little mini dream of mine to actually have a conversation with Dave, much less get him on a show that we were making. And so it's been really cool for me. I'm a bit of a fanboy, so that's why Mike is going to take the reins on the interview a little bit, so it doesn't sound like a Dopey love fest.
I have a suspicion you're not going to be able to just sit there.
No,
and
can
not
you see?
say
I'm
anything.
so nervous.
That is not your way.
No.
But with respect to those other recovery podcasts, some of them are actually pretty good.
Yeah, I love Recovery Elevator.
But many I listen to now just, and they kind of irritate me.
Just to see if they rip us off.
Well, it's funny you should say that because I was listening to, what the heck's the name of that one? She used to live in our town.
Yeah, Soberful.
Soberful.
She was in my AA group.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So, not for the first time this week, I noticed them sort of picking up or pulling at a thread that you and I had started pulling out of the sweater a little while ago, and I'm wondering if there's some borrowing of material since her and her buddy are in their 100th year of doing the podcast.
Yeah,
and I guess topics get scarce every once in a while.
And
they're not bad. You should go listen to them. Yeah. This week their topic was why we count days, and I was like, okay, that's interesting because Nat and I have talked about that, and then. They go in on this whole discussion about, people who relapse and then come back and they get shamed by AA and everything. And I'm like, Nat and I have talked about that too.
Quite a bit.
And it was something a couple of months ago, same deal. So I don't know.
I mean we didn't invent that people are being shamed.
We don't. And there's plenty of topics that
I would love to get her on. Not only,
and I don't know if she's going to come on now that I've accused her of ripping us off.
Well, she can defend herself. She could acquit herself nicely. She's sharp. She used to chair the meetings I used to go to in our town, and consequently, she's got children that are school aged that. They were good customers of mine too.
Oh,
so
okay.
I know her pretty well. I don't know if she was aware. I know she knows I was in her AA group, but I never came out to ask her about podcasting and stuff. But if I did, she has a beautiful accent and I love listening to her talk.
And it is a good podcast. It's one of the few that I continue to listen to.
Yeah.
On a semi-regular
and
basis.
now you listen to Dopey somewhat since I
also listen
along.
to Dopey on a semi-regular basis. Yes.
And I think Dopey is really the future of how recovery and entertainment will kind of evolve.
That was us, actually.
Well, yeah, we're gonna wait till he gets to it and then just cut in front. Right?
That's right. That's how that works, right?
So how has your life been? Did you go to Mexico or what?
Did I go to Mexico? I did go to Mexico. It was a very strange trip, though. Some of that is from YouTube, folks, and some of that is from Nat's mouth. I'll let you decide which is which. I did go to Mexico.
Against all better judgment and advice from all your friends and family? Or?
Not to mention from the CDC and from our Emperor Cuomo.
Yeah. And you're looking a little green. I don't know if you got the corona or you're just drinking Coronas.
I am the most tested person in New York State, probably. I got a test 3 days before I went to Mexico.
Doesn't count.
Yeah. I got one in Mexico.
Oh, that's
and then
scary.
I got one when I got back. So
did they give you a shot of tequila with the? Were they like, can I get a shot? And they're like,
it's funny you should say that because when you go to the resort, they had a COVID concierge, which sign of the times. But you have to wait on this very long line, and they give you your appointment, and they say, please be on time, and whatever you do, don't show up drunk. Because
they said that?
Yes, they said because it skews the test results, and you might get a false positive. And not a problem for me, but maybe a problem for some.
That is great.
Well, they actually said people have been showing up drunk, and it's become a problem.
It's at the resort. All they do, how did you not drink?
I mean, how dare they schedule a COVID test for 3:00 in the afternoon? Don't they know that people are drunk by 3:00 in the afternoon?
Definitely. I mean, you got to have a Bloody Mary or a mimosa in the morning, and then around lunchtime you're having what do you have? Daiquiris.
I don't know what you have with lunch? Pina coladas.
Something. Everything has rum, right? Or
tequila
or rum.
So we talked about me going down there a couple episodes ago, and I was experiencing some trepidation about going to an all-inclusive and not drinking because it was the first time that will have happened to me. But
I don't know how you did that without being in the AA program. I mean, according to my friend Sergeant Slaughter, who is some kind of AA proponent who completely refuses to even take their suggestions, but if we're making our lives better with something else, somehow that's a dry drunk. He actually...
Whatever. That's what you want to call me.
He was like,
fine.
I wonder how long that's going to last. I'm like, what are you talking about?
Year and a half so
Mike's
far.
doing great. What do you mean, how long is it going to last? Well, being a dry drunk. And I'm like, ugh.
Listen, I've seen plenty of people with 20 years in AA that are just fucking so tight and fucking angry at the world that, whatever program they're working in there isn't really working for them.
Go on.
Just to close the circle on Mexico, or open the circle. We got to the airport, with all the kids and everything, and we go into the Delta Lounge because I have some status based on my previous travels, and there's people drinking beer at 9:00 in the morning. And not insignificant number of people, which
I remember seeing that in airports. Being it could be like 6 a.m. You were making a flight because there's people. I used to think, it's because they've been up all night flying, and so they're. But usually it's not. They're just people drinking at the airport,
right? Because somehow the airport is it's a free zone to do whatever you want, I guess. But that was the first thing that I noticed that I probably wouldn't have noticed before, and I didn't never really notice it when I was traveling for work. But then we get to the resort, and we usually go because my wife works in education. We usually have to go, on the school breaks, right? But we try and stagger it. So if we go on a school break, it's like the February break because the teachers union's strong in New York, so everybody gets a week off in February. They don't get that anywhere else in most places. I mean, it's usually around President's Day. People get a couple days. So we go in February. There's not a lot of people there. This was the first time we went over what would be traditionally considered spring break or Holy Week, Semana Santa, right? The first thing I noticed when we get there is, number one, there's no Europeans. There usually is a ton of Europeans because, I don't know, it's an Iberostar. It's a name that Americans aren't really that familiar with. So they get a lot of people from England, a lot of people from Spain, a lot of people from... But the Europeans can't travel right now. So it was all Americans.
I see.
Instantly, the IQ of the resort dropped by like 50 points. I've never seen anything like it. The first thing I get there, I go to the pool. We go to check out the pool. There's a guy and his girlfriend or wife practically having sex right there, drunk off their asses.
For free? I mean, you didn't have to pay?
I didn't have to pay to watch. Nobody did.
How long did you stand there?
Well, Aaron's like, do you see what's going on next to you? I'm like, of course I do. How could I not see it?
See what?
But so as we're walking to the pool, we see that, and then we see a fight between a drunken girl and her boyfriend.
Nice.
And she's sitting on the side of a building crying while he's sitting on the porch, drinking more beer.
Right.
And so I have to say, like, everything I saw the first 24 hours I was there was not an advertisement for consuming alcohol. It was a very anti-alcohol thing. And I wonder if I would have noticed that had the first thing in my mind been, get me a drink, I'm on vacation. Probably not. I probably would have minimized it or not even seen it.
Right.
But similar behavior like that over the course of the next few days was an excellent reminder to me of why I don't drink. And in fact, I felt the opposite of desire to drink. I felt like revulsion at the idea of drinking because what it did to the people that were there. And it was just a constant, steady stream of drunks.
And you didn't work 12 steps with a sponsor?
No, I didn't. I
don't
didn't
understand.
do anything like that. No.
So how is this possible?
Because
it's just a matter of time.
I changed
right?
my mind, man.
It's just a matter of time, as they might say. You dry drunk.
Well, I mean, I know what people think a dry drunk is. You know, it's this angry, white knuckling, barely be able to maintain sobriety, feeling deprived, feeling like I'm not, able to do what I want to do, and nothing could be further from the truth.
Right. I mean, and that's the paradigm that we have to break. Instead of, and the people who are angry or nasty about people who are being happy and being sober without the 12 steps, instead of looking at how much better life can be when you break free from the ingrained dogma of AA, some people, even in perpetual failure and misery, won't allow themselves to change their perspective and in turn achieve the life they truly want and deserve. So it's totally counterintuitive. And it boxes a person into this mindset that there is only one way to be successful. And if there's only one way, if you believe there's only one way, and you have told yourself you can't do it or it's impossible, then there's nothing that you can do. And so it gives you an excuse then to not try anything else.
Right.
Or to not try and make your life better a different way, because you just say, well, if I'm not successful unless I do this, then you're setting yourself up for failure, and your life is going to continue to be miserable.
Well, yeah, and the sad thing is you're going to be continually mystified by the fact that this program that is the one true religion of recovery is not working for you.
It's failing.
So it's like there's something wrong with me.
So why not look at someone like you or me who is happy, has gone from a place of, you've heard some of the stories on the show. I mean, we're talking about the worst kind of addiction, the deadliest situations, the most life-ruining scenarios. And to get us to a place right now where we're happy, joyous, and free, just like they talk about in meetings.
Yeah.
Right? And so why not, instead of nitpicking things from a program that just simply doesn't apply anymore to us, why are you going to talk that down? Why wouldn't you just try and emulate it maybe? Why not say, wow, that's working for you?
Well, not that I'm calling an AA a cult, but there's definitely some...
I was going to say cunt.
Some group... both words with a C. There's some groupthink that goes on there that, like many other cults, when you think you have the answer to life and everybody else is just sad because they don't have it, it's very hard to change the way you think and look and get outside of that box and look back in and see where things are working and things are not working. So maybe there's some sort of recovery deprogramming that needs to go on.
I mean, that's what happened for me. That's what I had to do. I had to deprogram myself by reaching out to all of these other methods and finally getting out of that mindset, that impossible path. I no longer have the excuse that AA doesn't work to stay sick. I used to carry that as an excuse. I tried it and it didn't work. Therefore, this is my life forever.
Or I tried it 20 times and it didn't work. Right?
Yeah. Or like I was in inpatient rehab 4 times and 3 different whatever it is, and it ain't working. Your life ain't getting better. Do something different. And I think this goes to what's been coming up lately, this debate about California sober. And what is California sober? Because we've had some discussions online.
I mean,
about
my understanding is that California sober used to be just smoking weed. But apparently, what's her name? Demi Lovato?
Yeah, I keep calling her Vera DeMilo, like the Jim Carrey bodybuilder character.
I keep thinking Demi Moore.
Demi Lovato.
Like going back.
Demi Lovato.
Demi Lovato.
She was a bad addict that had seizures and ODs and stuff very publicly.
Yes, but she considers California sober. Wow, I just turned into Arnold Schwarzenegger.
California
sober to be alcohol as well as cannabis use if it keeps you off of heroin. So harm reduction, yes. Sobriety, no.
Right. I said something brilliant on a Facebook group that I printed out.
You did print it out here.
I did. I printed it out. But people were, I think the Situation guy, Mr. Abs from Jersey Shore, had posted something like...
The Situation is his name, right?
The Situation.
Yeah.
And he had made some posts that California sober will kill you. So people had reposted it and we were arguing about it. And so what I said was if I find people who get mad about California sober are mostly just unhappy with the program they followed to turn their life around. And the idea that maybe they could have avoided all that shame and pain drives them crazy.
Yes.
Just my opinion.
I think I gave you a like on that comment.
Yes, you did. You're very brave. Well,
I gotta say though, California sober, if it's marijuana, I don't really have an issue with that. If you're drinking, I think alcohol is the most dangerous drug out there.
100%.
So for me,
fentanyl's more dangerous.
Well, okay, but you know what I mean? Like
Yes.
in terms of social cost, personal costs
Sure.
over the long term. Fentanyl is dangerous because you could be a one and done.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, but alcohol is endemic.
Yeah.
It's destroying families. It's destroying lives.
So using alcohol in your recovery, I never did a drug unless I was drunk.
That's over the line.
So
I wouldn't even do that in a harm to try and get someone to reduce their alcohol intake is the goal of some programs, and using Vivitrol. But I think it's, for me, I don't go into it. Like, I wouldn't smoke marijuana. That's just me, because I don't want to get outside myself.
Yeah,
I'm not looking to get
issue, right?
high. It's not what I want. I want what I have now.
It seems extremely cliche, but being high on life is really a thing. It's a thing. And
it is.
And it's a good thing.
And I feel good about it. And, I just wanted to say, we took a dark week last week because of Mexico. And it sucks when we take a dark week, because I really didn't want to, but we also didn't want to put out a show that was, less than what we feel like we can do.
Right.
And therefore rob you guys of something worth, that we find is good.
I couldn't have done it. I tried, but my wife had to come back 2 days early from Mexico, leaving me with the 3 kids in Mexico.
Yeah. So I said,
I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to ever do that.
And then we were like, we'll do it on Saturday. And then my wife reminded me that it was Easter on Sunday, and that, it just wasn't happening. But
so sorry, guys. I take most of the blame for that.
I give most of the blame to Mike on that.
I even brought all the stuff to Mexico to record on, and I just couldn't find an hour.
We missed you guys, and I'm happy to be here. And one of the things I just mentioned, Easter happened, and we didn't get to talk about it yet. I had probably one of the best Easters in a long time.
Awesome.
We went to my sister-in-law's apartment out east, and it was, everybody there had been vaccinated, except one person that we were arguing with. And it was really fun, but it's another one of these drinking holidays,
When we say out east, by the way, we mean the east end of Long Island,
right?
Which, you folks probably don't know.
Yeah, it was great. We did Easter egg hunts in the morning, and we even went to church. And this was a point of contention for me, because I'm pretty involved in my local church, and it's important for me to participate in church services and things like that, and to raise my kids, with that going on. So we were able to put it on the television via Zoom. I even got my kids we all dressed up for Easter.
To stand in front of the TV?
Yes, just to stand in front of the TV. And they did it. They went along with it. We wore, you saw that picture I posted online. We're all wearing those same shirts, right? I look amazing, don't I?
Absolutely. I was kind of impressed at Noah wearing a jacket, but
yeah, and he did that on his own too. It was just a lot of fun, but the kids, they can't sit still for normal church.
Right.
And so finally, 20, 30 minutes into the sermon, of course, the kids just lost interest completely, which I don't blame them. Normally, they don't sit through the whole thing. They go to Sunday school.
Right.
So, and I was like, you know what? I was visibly upset about it. I think I texted you something like, I don't know, my family sucks or something like that. And you're like, what's wrong? I'm like, it's nothing. And but my wife, knows that it's important to me that they do this stuff. And so she was pissed at them, more than I was getting outwardly mad at them. And she was pretty much laid into them pretty hard. And I didn't feel good about that. I don't like that. But
the surest way to get them to not like to go to church is if they get fucking screamed.
Well, yeah, and that's my point. But, she was right. And, maybe telling them that, hey, guys, Daddy does a lot for you. He doesn't ask much of you. This is this one thing. But you know what? After that, one of my sons, Noah, started to hide the eggs in the backyard from Max. They saw that something, that I was upset a little bit. and my wife making them feel guilty, which is sometimes the strongest thing.
Sometimes that works. Though,
and then we proceeded to have a great day with their cousins, and it was a lot of fun, and it gave me a lot of hope, for the future.
Good. That's excellent. My experience was somewhat different. We had the excuse of being technically under quarantine when we got back from Mexico, so we could not attend church in person.
So you would have gone to actual church?
I would have gone the night before. I'm like a Saturday.
So the Catholics have their stuff moving. They're actually doing it in church.
In-person stuff. Yeah. We've been going to the 5:00 mass on Saturday because that's permitted in lieu of a Sunday in the Catholic world.
I was always confused by that.
It's actually great, but the priest always makes some sort of comment like, "Oh, you guys are 5:00 Saturday people, so you'll civilian." So I don't know what that means, but anyway, we couldn't go, and I have 2 teenagers who are not getting up at 7 a.m. for egg hunts anymore, although their brother is, so that creates a little tension in the house.
I can imagine.
But what we do with eggs is, we hide regular eggs, and then we hide plastic ones. And inside the plastic ones, we'll put a piece of candy, but some of the eggs we put money in. And 3 of the eggs we put like a $20 bill.
How many did your neighbor kid Billy find?
Billy, I run him off with the shotgun whenever he shows up.
Is Billy running around in his underwear like Pigpen, cloud of dust following him?
I don't know what's going on in that house. But so they each can only find one of the golden eggs with the money. So that usually incentivizes them to go out there and look. And, so we did that, and then we had people over who Erin's mother was only partially vaccinated, and her Vietnam vet husband doesn't believe in vaccination, so he came over without it, and I'm like, am I going to kill this guy? I'm bringing Mexican COVID back, and I'm going to give it to this guy. He's going to die.
That's his fault. Man.
Well, I was like, it's his choice, So it was, we just had a nice day. But
I got a vaccine, I'd like to say.
Oh, congratulations.
I'm just checking time. We're going to
we're good.
See if our guest is almost ready. I got my vaccination. I'm very excited. I'm very happy. I have a neighbor, because at 30 and up, I guess that's in New York at least, was recently released that we could get shots. Before that, some people were asking me, "Aren't you public facing?"
Yeah, you are.
Aren't I? And the truth is that there's no sports store owner lobby in Washington, and so we get no protection, and nobody cares.
I thought if you were
about us.
Anybody in retail could get one. No?
Not for me. Okay. I don't know. Maybe they just didn't like me because of my tan and the beard.
It's funny how they went, as our governor's scandals, he's playing a little grab ass with his interns, but as his scandals started multiplying, his, is that not PC?
A little grab ass.
So as his
it minimizes how horrifying it is to do something like that to a woman. Come on.
Okay. Fair enough. But as his scandal starts multiplying, he started reducing the vaccine age really fast. Really it was quickly. 60, then it was 50, and he just skipped 40, went right to 30. And then finally
he's like
16 years old.
And then he's like, and by the way, marijuana's legal.
Yeah. Right. That came out of nowhere.
If you guys aren't hearing about what's happening in New York, the governor, like Mike just said, is getting in trouble for basically, pulling a Donald Trump and just like harassing women all over the place. And they're all coming out. And so in order to obfuscate the charges, I guess, to hide them, he started, like we just said, and legalizing marijuana. Right. And that's kind of the big story because we're not doing recovery in the news this week because
sports betting is also coming, apparently.
And sports betting, too.
So, it's very weird. Instead of playing hide the salami, he's playing hide the... some other stuff. But it was interesting to watch these small town people
this is big
in the
news
Facebook
around
group
here.
Go absolutely berserk at the legalization. And the thing that really drives me crazy is there's one local politician here who posts in the Facebook group about how, it hurts her heart that the children are now going to have to smell marijuana when they go. And I'm thinking, you literally design street fairs where people can drink in public and stumble up and down the block around kids. And this is the fucking thing that's,
this is the straw that breaks the camel's back. But we're not talking about domestic violence caused by alcohol, drunk driving caused by alcohol, general unhappiness and chaos that is daily caused by alcohol. But that's okay.
I really had to hold my tongue because I wanted to post something along the lines of I would rather my kids be ripping bong hits than drinking and driving up through the middle of town. But I'm like, I can't say that.
I would 100% prefer that. I'm not saying that just yet, but when it does come up, I'm going to err on the side of no alcohol and whatnot. But
so I get my vaccine on Sunday, by the way.
Yeah, so you get it on Sunday. So I was just about to tell this crazy story about how I got my vaccine. So I had a couple of appointments very far away, and then my wife is trying to get me signed up. Our neighbor owns a pharmacy, and apparently once I was able to legally with my age, she was able to bring a dose home and get me officially signed up. And I stopped at her house and I got the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which is a 1-shot. And I definitely for a few days was like my body was struggling,
right?
Which I'm told is common and also a good sign that your body is creating, what it needs to fight the virus.
Right.
So I definitely lost my usual get up and go that I've been riding, this upswing that I've had the past couple of months.
Or mania, as
it's
others
mania,
call it.
yeah. But because I've been going, getting so much done, and then for like 4 days I couldn't bring myself to do anything. I just felt horrible. But I feel all better now. I'm protected. I'm doing my part to protect my fellow human beings, and I feel good about it. And pretty soon,
yes,
Mr. Mike,
I'm going to do it so I can get the vaccine passport so I can go to concerts.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'm just tired of living like a hermit.
It's a mark of the beast. It's the mark. It's the Antichrist.
So you don't believe
rising.
that Bill Gates is putting chips into your bloodstream or anything? No.
Bill Gates does not care about what is happening.
I mean, if
with
people
us.
want to track you, all they have to do is
he has enough money, guys.
he
doesn't want
phone
power
in your pocket. They
he
can track.
Care.
They know what you're. They knew every time you fucking fart with this thing.
So I don't know. I'm excited. Everybody is getting vaccinated. And one of the last things I want to touch on before we get our guest on is that my midlife crisis. I wanted to give a midlife crisis update. I recently ordered rollerblades. And
elbow pads, I hope.
No elbow pads.
Yeah, you're gonna be in a cast.
And running sneakers. And I got the ones that all of my middle-aged male friends who run get, the Brooks Ghosts.
Yeah, you sent me a text the other day that was hysterical. You were like, "These are really comfortable sneakers. I wonder what it's going to feel like to run in them or something."
And I fully plan to exercise. More than, because I've just been doing push-ups. And,
that's exercise, right?
It is. I do a couple hundred a day, just throughout the day. I keep doing them until,
someone tells you to stop.
Pretty much. I use my nervous energy to exercise, and my diet's going well. So my wife is embarrassed at the idea of me being seen with rollerblades.
Yeah, where are you going to rollerblade?
I haven't decided yet.
Because you live on a hill.
Well, that's the thing.
If you build up a good head of steam, you're going to be shooting out into the roadway down there.
When I brought the rollerblades home, my mother-in-law was over, and she was like, I just want to say, don't go out on your street. Go to the park. Don't, and she was just, I'm like, yes, Mom. Yes. Okay. What do you think? I'm a schmuck? And clearly I am.
Rollerblades are interesting. I remember.
I love rollerblading.
I lived in the city back in the 90s, and that's when they were a real thing. And everybody was like, you go up to Central Park, and there'd be these guys with their shirts off rollerblading.
That's going to be me. I'm going to be that
just
guy.
Be careful down here. Because
I need a hip pack. I need a neon
need
hip
a fanny pack. Yep.
Or a fanny pack, as they say.
I know what you were going to call it, and you're not allowed to say that anymore.
I don't remember.
All right. Just leave it alone.
Okay. So anyway, I'm feeling like I want to get to this interview.
Can I do the introduction?
Well, yeah, of course. Here is the introduction.
Okay. So I wrote out way more than I should have for this. Okay. This week's guest is Dave M. Dave is a recovering drug addict and the host of the popular podcast Dopey, which is a podcast about drugs and dumb shit. Dopey is a podcast about drugs and recovery, but it's also a podcast about Dave and his life on Long Island, where he lives with his wife and 2 daughters. Dopey has guests that range from comedic luminaries like Mark Maron and Artie Lang to recovery movement superstars like Dr. Drew and celebrities like Dog the Bounty Hunter. A veritable who's who of addicts and alcoholics that join Dave on a weekly basis share their stories and their recoveries with the Dopey Nation.
Yes.
Okay.
So that is the introduction, and here is the interview.
Reminding me to turn the recorder on is good.
Hello?
Hey, Dave.
Hey,
it's
Dave.
Nat and Mike from Recovery in the Middle Ages. What's up, man?
What's happening? Do you want me to put on headphones, or does it sound okay?
Yeah.
Sounds good.
We can live with it.
Yeah.
You sound great, cool. As usual. And thank you so much for coming on the show, Dave. I've been dreaming about this moment. It's almost like a podcast childhood dream of mine to even have a conversation with you, much less get you on my show. So I'd like to thank you again.
It really has. It really has. Nat has been so excited. I've had to talk him down a little bit this morning, but
I'm a little excited.
The most fucked up part is I talk to Nat like 4 days a week. I don't know why you're so excited about it. Give me a break.
I don't know. I'm just, It's
I don't know.
It's
We're
great.
We were trying
happy
to figure out how to approach the interview because Nat's like unbridled Dopey fanboy enthusiasm level is so high. I figure if I let him go at it the way he wants to, it would just be like a virtual love fest of inside jokes and Dopey Nation name dropping. So I'm just going to take lead on some of the early stuff if that's all right with you.
I appreciate your professionalism.
Yes.
Go to town.
Thank you. I mean, believe it or not, we probably have some listeners here that don't listen to Dopey. When we started the podcast, Nat was always going on Dopey this, Dopey that, and I had never actually heard of Dopey before we started this because my idea of the Recovery in the Middle Ages podcast was something like I don't know, more like a one of the traditional have somebody come on, tell their story, and then talk about the psychology behind it. And thank God I met Nat and we didn't do that because there's like 6 million of those out there and they tend to get a little repetitive after a while. So I guess like a lot of, but I listen now and I really enjoy your podcast.
We've made a fan out of him, Dave. Don't worry. This is just part of my marketing strategy. One person at a time.
Yeah.
So, first thing I did, though, is I went and I listened to the piece about your podcast that was featured on This American Life. And I would urge anybody listening to the interview to seek out that episode and give it a listen. It gives a good history of the founding of the podcast in the early years. Do you think they did a good job sort of crystallizing the essence of Dopey or give you a fair shake?
Yeah, I think they did. I thought it was, when I listened to it, I remember I was going home from my waiter shift late on a Friday evening when the show came out. And I was on the Long Island Railroad listening to This American Life talk about Dopey and Ira Glass talk about me in the same breath that he talked about Howard Stern. So it was very heady stuff. And listening to Chris's voice and Todd's voice on this gigantic show was very emotional. I thought they did an amazing job. The only thing that bothered me was they didn't really, I don't think they gave the fact that the show is still going the shake that it deserved. And they kind of I thought they kind of talked shit about the way the show is still going. They really poo-pooed it. But maybe I wanted them to grandiose it. I wanted it to be and Dopey's still going and they're doing different stuff and it's not over, but she was very much and I really loved the producer, but she was very much and now Dopey is kind of the straight interview show. Whatever, who cares?
Left-handed, yeah.
Yeah, so I didn't like that.
I never listened to it.
Besides that, I thought it was great. It's a good piece, Matt. You'd like it.
I don't. It's one of those things. The more somebody tells me to do something, the less I want to do it. But and on top of that, I was, as a listener, when I was catching up to Dopey when the pandemic started, when I finally did, like a lot of people who find out about Dopey and start from the beginning, if you don't necessarily know what happened, when you do get to that tragic episode, which was so heart-wrenching, Dave, and you handled it really, really better than I could have imagined. I mean, that was such a difficult time for you. And the fact that you did a show the very next week, with his fiance and that even that same, the week before doing it. But it was so heartbreaking for all of us who were listening and got close, listening to you and Chris. And for me, I don't want to listen to that and go back to that time. It was traumatizing, as crazy as that sounds.
So just before I get your answer for that, let me just fill in the listeners on something that they may be not familiar with. So you started Dopey as a podcast where you and your friend Chris would tell drug stories, war stories, kind of thing. Not a lot of talk of recovery, not a lot of talk of 12 steps. You had originally listed it in the comedy section, if I'm not mistaken, of Apple's iTunes. And then after 4 years of sobriety, your co-host Chris died of an overdose in the summer of 2018. And you continued afterwards. That must have been a difficult decision.
It wasn't a difficult decision. And I don't think, even though we said the show was just about war stories, I don't think it really was just about war stories. And I think it was about 12-step recovery, but not explaining it, more like 12-step recovery through the lens of somebody who didn't understand it and was trying to do it. You know what I mean? Like, it certainly wasn't a primer for how to recover through 12-step, but a lot of the early episodes were me struggling with it and having Chris explain stuff about it and then us making fun of it. So like that was a big piece of it. And our recovery was intrinsically built into the war stories because in the first episode, because we knew as soon as we did an episode that if we didn't mention we were in recovery, it would be a slippery slope of possibly glorifying drugs. So I think that was baked in a kind of secretive, fun way. And people don't we made it. I said on the first episode that if it was about recovery, I didn't want to do the show, but that was like a fake out because it was always about recovery because we were in recovery. The whole show was about recovery because we were going to meetings and sober and drug addicts. So
that was the magic.
I felt like, well, that was the deal, I thought. And I mean, to answer your question in terms of sticking with it, I don't think about that day. I don't think about the day that Chris died very often because it's incredibly painful.
Sure.
And I don't think I've thought about the day that I recorded that episode. I think it was episode 143.
Yep.
I never think about that, but just you guys bringing it up, I remember I was at my dad's house and I remember taking out the gear for the first time by myself in the kitchen, and it was really clean for some reason in the kitchen that day. And it was surreal and scary and sad and painful. And just, I never for a second thought I wasn't going to do the show because deep down, doing the show was my dream. Having a show like Dopey or any show, I wanted to do that since I was like in 9th grade. So like I had an audience, and selfishly, I wasn't going to stop doing the show. There was all sorts of other altruistic business, but the bottom line was I liked it too much to stop, and I finally had an audience, and I wasn't going to give that up.
Well, I think by that time, too, you had probably realized that Dopey was helping a lot of people. And so continuing, you do more good by continuing than by not continuing. I mean, the worst...
I still don't look at it like that. I even now, like when I know that people get some sort of benefit from it, it doesn't add up like that in my mind. Like I can't imagine, like I just want the show to be good and entertaining. And if anybody gets something out of it, that's a bonus. But like, I think, and that's something that I've always talked about. And Chris used to talk about, like, I think the second we think the show is going to be some help, the second the show sucks.
Interesting.
That is interesting because, Nat and I and the infinitesimally small audience that we have, whenever we get a note from somebody saying you helped me not use today or something, I mean, we're like over the moon.
Yeah, it's like everything to me. I hear one person, and we have gotten a few, and that are really, even in some of our reviews where people will say something like, "Thank you so much for helping me understand that I am not a failure because AA didn't work for me, and that and just to make them feel like they could do something. There is something that you can do, that if you failed at this one thing, that guess what? There are other options, and you're not a failure." And just making people feel like, they're worth something, and there is no shame, and keep going and open other doors, read other books,
I think that it's like two sides of the same coin. Like I love nothing more than hearing from the listeners. It's like my favorite thing in the world. And I'd be lying if I said I didn't like to hear that Dopey helps people. But I kind of like, that's hard for me to digest, that Dopey helps people. What I like to hear is, oh, Dopey's funny. I like to listen to it. It kept me company. It help me get through the day.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like that's the kind of, and listen, just because I say something doesn't mean it's true. It's just my interpretation of how I cope with my process of making the show. I just want the show to be fun to listen to. I want it to be listenable and entertaining the way Howard Stern is for me.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like it's a weird thing. You know what I mean? And it's like, I just know, I mean, me and Chris used to talk about it, and it's like my favorite cliche about Dopey was that if we made Dopey to help people, Dopey would suck and nobody would get help. But if we make Dopey to be fun, then it will be listenable and people will get fun and people will get help. And Chris's great phrase was, it was the rope-a-dope. We draw people in with the debauchery and they absorb the recovery.
And kick them in the nuts.
Exactly. That was the whole thing.
Well, I mean, that's great. I mean, because, you know, what makes the war stories so fun and listenable is, you know, the fact that you're sitting there talking about them.
Right.
You know, because those stories are tragic if they end up in a tragic, you know what I mean?
They often do, you know.
I mean, they're funny, but, you know, they're funny because you survived them.
Yeah, but you actually, some of the things that Dopey has done, which is amazing, and something I aspire to do with this podcast, is you actually got... what's it called? Scholarships. You actually have sent, maybe it's 12 people or less.
I think it's like 9.
Yeah.
I think we sent 9 people to treatment.
That right there is huge, man. And that is directly helping someone. And like DJ, you know, look at him now. Look at him go. He's amazing,
man.
helping out with getting all the advertisers on the show, and I've met with him since we've been working on marketing for Dopey with you, and he's great, man, and that's a testament right there.
Well, that's the best story of all. Mike, I don't know if you know this story. I'm going to tell you this story. You ready?
Yeah, please.
There's this guy. His name is Don Jr. His father's name was Don, and he calls himself DJ. For some reason, I got into the habit of calling him Don. So I call him Don. I think of him as as Dopey's Don Draper. But years and years ago, he came to my apartment. He was friends with one of Chris's best friends. He grew up with one of Chris's best friends in Grosse Pointe, Michigan. And he was a terrible junkie. And he came to my apartment on the Lower East Side, and he was on methadone. And we recorded a very classic episode of Dopey together. It was the episode where I told my experience of 9/11, and Don told his story of stealing like 5,000 Vicodins, and his story of going to Scientology rehab. It was a classic Dopey episode. And I kind of lost touch with him. And Chris would always mention, I think this guy is fucking fucked. And then Chris died, and I kind of felt like I should be checking in on him. And he was fucking fucked. He was shooting speedballs with heroin and crack in Michigan, and just failing, you know, doing terribly. And then, you know, the Dopey scholarship program happened because Mountainside, which was the rehab where Chris and I met, wanted to actually sponsor Dopey, but we had a sponsorship with another rehab called Aloe, and we couldn't have 2 rehabs. So Mountainside wanted to do an event, which was DopeyCon. And at the end of DopeyCon, they surprised me and offered us a scholarship for one of our listeners. And when we got the scholarship from Mountainside, I had been in touch with so many people at so many different facilities throughout the course of doing Dopey, and I was like, well, maybe I can get more scholarships. So I started calling up everybody I knew at treatment, and we managed to get, I think we got 11 set up. And my friend Justin, who works at a place called Turnbridge, he's now in charge of the scholarship program. But I remember it was a rainy night, and I was driving to pick up dinner for my family, and Don called me up, and he was all fucked up and like dying, basically. Mm-hmm. He was shooting crazy amounts of crack and heroin. And I said, you know, I have a scholarship that I can send you to rehab. And I got a scholarship from Aloe, which was, I think, a 9-month scholarship.
Wow.
And that would have been worth a fortune.
Yeah, like $100,000.
Well, more than that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he got a plane ticket, and he went out there shooting on the plane. Probably he was shooting speedballs, and he had an abscess, which is from an infection.
I remember hearing that. Yeah,
he had this terrible abscess and he showed me a picture of it, and like, I don't cringe easily, and it was like one of the most disgusting things I ever saw. And he got to Aloe, and they decided he needed to have surgery on it. And before they gave him surgery, they gave him a dose of Suboxone, only he was still high on the heroin. So if you take Suboxone when you're high on heroin, you go into what's called precipitated withdrawal, where you get totally sick.
I've been there.
He goes into total withdrawal, and they take him to the hospital to lance the abscess off. He calls me up screaming and crying on the phone, out of his mind. And the miracle of DJ or Don is he goes through the program. He just celebrated a year. He's now, I make a joke of it. I call him the head of the Dopey sales department. He is the Dopey sales department. He sold 90% of our ads.
No kidding.
And he's just doing so good. And, it amazes me. Don is my favorite story around Dopey besides the fact that he exists. Because and I don't want to put pressure on Don, but he's amazing. And he's hitting it out of the park every week. He's always just sticking with it. And also he's very serious about his program, and he's my friend, you know what I mean? And I'm just very proud of that.
That's awesome.
Amazing story.
That's so Dopey does help people, right?
At least one, right? At least one.
Yeah, don't tell anybody. I don't like to make that the whole thing, but yeah, of course Dopey helps. Of course it does. But it's for me. I want to be an entertaining podcaster. I want to make a good show.
Absolutely, of course. So you mentioned that you met Chris in rehab. How long before you started the podcast did you guys know each other?
We started recording the podcast at the end of 2015, and we met in May of 2011.
And when you started those early episodes, I think Nat mentioned to me it was just you and Chris sitting around talking into the laptop microphone. It was just kind of a lo-fi affair.
Totally.
Yeah.
But that was by design, in that I was doing a web series, and I was doing a web series about my job at Katz's.
Oh yeah, and I've watched some of those.
Thank you.
They're very funny.
Thank you. I'm glad you watched it. I appreciate that. But Chris was very enamored with the fact that I got attention from it. A bunch of different places wrote about it. And then the guy who made Anthony Bourdain's show offered me a contract, and I flew to LA to pitch it. And Chris was very enamored by that. And he was like, "Oh, I want to do something creative with you." I was like, "Okay." And I had another friend who I had worked with years and years ago who told me he had an idea to do a podcast about drug stories. And I basically just stole my friend's idea, which my friend is still upset about. But my friend wasn't a drug addict. And I told Chris he should come. He said, "What do we do?" And I said, and I was very confident that I could make a podcast. Even though I'd never heard a podcast, I was very confident that I could do it, only because I had literally listened to the Howard Stern show religiously for 20 years. And in the back of my head, I was like, I could do that. I know what makes the Howard Stern show good, and I could take that and I could plug it in with Chris. And I remember he came over. He goes, "What do we need?" I said, "We don't need anything." I said, because I used to record music on my laptop, and I would just use the onboard microphone. And obviously, it wasn't hi-fi, production, but you could make a song.
Right.
And I knew that. And I also just had a feeling that if Chris and I had spent money on equipment before we had this show together, we would have gotten scared. Mm-hmm. There would have been an expectation that we couldn't live up to. So we did the first 50. I want to say we did the first 50 episodes talking into the computer, and then Chris bought this super shitty USB mic, and we did the next 50 episodes like that. And then we got Dr. Drew on the show.
That was amazing, man. That was amazing.
Well, it was amazing because Chris had actually been treated by Dr. Drew, and Chris was wanted to be a psychologist, so he was ready, super prepared with all the psychological shit. But I wasn't going to go to Dr. Drew's apartment with a shitty mic, with the shitty USB mic. So that's when I upgraded the equipment. But that's the story of why we started Lo-Fi. It was just because an expectation would have been, I think we wouldn't have been able to keep doing the show if we hadn't been so scrubby at first.
So how much clean time did you have when you started the podcast?
I think I had 4 months.
Ooh,
That's pretty ballsy.
but Chris had 3 years, and part of his character, just to tell our audience about Chris a little bit, he I think had 3 years at the time. But not only that. And his stories were crazy, man. He had like jail stories, and if you guys go to Dopey podcast and find those jail stories episodes. But Chris had the gnarliest stories, man. And not only that, when you started making Dopey with him, he was in a program, and I can never get this right. Was he trying to be a psychiatrist, like an actual doctor, or he was in a very advanced psychology or psychiatry program for drug addiction? Isn't that right?
He was at a school called William James Institution or William James University, which was in Boston. And William James had a reference in the Big Book, which is why I think Chris was so interested in it. But he was studying to get his PhD in psychology, which is a PsyD. And he was working in sober living. I mean, when we started making Dopey, he was living in sober living.
Wow.
When he died, I mean, he had 2.5 years and I had 4 months. And it wasn't about trying to, 12-step the world or spread a recovery message or anything. It was about making a show about two drug addicts talking about the dumbest shit they had ever done and the shit that they deal with. And that's why it was drugs, addiction, and dumb shit. Because it was about, drugs, using drugs. It was about dealing with addiction, and it was about the stupid shit that we all deal with, like what kind of cereal we eat or how we like our chocolate or whatever.
You're right.
What we eat for dinner.
Very Seinfeldian. But the balance between you two was noticeable, and it was really part of the synergy was that Chris had this encyclopedic knowledge of recovery science that he put together with his own experience to create this really unique perspective and really valuable perspective that you balanced out with just being funny and kind of showing what your experience was. You were at the very beginning of trying to get sober, and then he was kind of at another level. And so to hear you guys kind of go back and forth, and his, some of his canned responses, he could quote the Big Book chapter and verse, and you were definitely not doing that at that time, So it was just really, really magical kind of synergy you guys had.
Yeah, it's funny because he was in that program, he would learn stuff, and then we would get to talk about it. So it really kind of just worked out that way. And then I remember I got into a Big Book study because I was so uninformed that I was like, I need to learn this so I could actually talk about it in a way that makes sense. But yeah, I mean, he had that encyclopedic knowledge of recovery. He also had the same encyclopedic knowledge of the pharmacopoeia. He knew every substance, every generic name, dosages. He knew
research chemicals too. I remember you guys used to talk about research chemicals. I love that stuff. It's so weird.
But he didn't know the difference of Prince and Queen.
Right.
He didn't know. He knew nothing about popular culture, and he knew everything about addiction.
Yeah, he thought like Led Zeppelin did Abbey Road or something like that. There was some funny stuff like that.
Yeah, it's true.
So where did your journey start into drug abuse? This is something I really don't know anything about. I went back and listened to a bunch of old episodes, but I don't think I ever really got the story of where you started. I know you were a bit of a weed connoisseur, but beyond that, I'm not really sure. Like, when was the first time you started doing drugs?
I mean, I guess if you want to count drinking, the first time I started doing drugs was drinking in high school. Like I would drink wine coolers before the high school dance.
Bartles and James.
And,
Bartles and James.
Yeah, I would drink that. And I remember I was a waiter at a summer camp. It was really the first time I drank. I was a waiter at a summer camp. And it was the first time. It was interesting because, I went to school in Manhattan, and I went to the same elementary school as high school. I was very safe. Mm-hmm. And I had a nice group of friends who were good kids. And my addict and my alcoholic didn't come out. It didn't come out until I had to go to this summer camp, and I felt totally alone. and I felt totally uncomfortable in my skin, and I felt like an outcast. And I felt like the way everybody kind of talks about at a meeting, the way alcoholics and addicts talk. I never felt like that until I went to the summer camp, and I had no friends. And it was funny you mentioned Abbey Road, because that was the first summer I got into music, and I would lie on a hill wearing headphones, listening to Abbey Road over and over, and getting into the kind of melancholy of it. And I kind of made friends with the European kitchen staff. And the last night of the summer, they got wasted and they invited us. And I probably drank 16 or 17 screwdrivers, and I blacked out. Yeah. And I barely drank after that. I got into drugs, but it was a sign. You know what I mean? It was this alcoholic sign. But I got into drugs, at the end of high school. I started smoking weed. And then I had that same sort of psychological feeling at the beginning of college, where I felt totally alone. And that's when my stonerness really kicked in. And I got, and like, I could imagine why somebody would call it self-medication. The second I got into smoking weed, I was like, this is the way I want to feel forever. And I probably started smoking every day when I was 18, and I didn't stop. I mean, I took time off when I would go to rehab or detox or whatever, but I probably, besides that, I smoked every day from 18 to 41, religiously. And I lived for it. It was everything to me. And then from there, like, I was a musician, so I did a bunch of acid, and if there were mushrooms around, I would do mushrooms. And then I wound up going to art school, and I tried heroin, but I didn't care. And then coke would be around, and I would do that, and we'd sell acid. And kind of like that outlaw artist, hero, beatnik shit got into my head.
Right.
And I liked that fantasy. And then I always wanted to have a show, and I wound up working in production. And I guess we had a drug dealer who was a delivery service in Manhattan, and it was a company called Indulge, and they would print out these black business cards with the silhouette of a white guy with a top hat on, and somehow we got that card, and we would order drugs. We would order coke and ecstasy and pills and. So
this is in like the 90s, because I lived in Williamsburg at the time, and that was kind of like the heyday of those delivery services,
Yeah, I think the delivery services are still going on now.
Yeah, I'm sure they are, but the guys would show up and they'd have a little suitcase and they'd open it up and there was like some coke, like 5 different strains of weed, whatever you wanted. It was about the time that Cosmo was around. You remember that Cosmo? You could call them, they deliver it like jelly donuts to your house with a bottle of booze.
I thank God I never got a card like that when I was in. I mean, that's what I wanted. That's like what I dreamed about, man.
You could everything at your fingertips. Yeah.
I never did the Cosmo delivery. I was never a big drinker, but as soon as we found this guy, it was like the most incredibly exciting thing, just like you said, Nat. And they were sending me, I was working for this production company, and they flew me around the country to like get audiences for a talk show. And I came home one day, and my friend had moved in with me, and he was in the house, and a bunch of people from my college had showed up, and all of them were getting coke from our delivery service. And I, me being the like kind of bullshit capitalist that I thought I was like, you're going to make all this money. What are you going to give us? And he gave us 2 bags of heroin.
Nice. That's a smart move.
And that was, I mean, I don't
not for you.
That was the moment. That was the moment where I did it, and it made me feel exactly the way I wanted to feel. And from there, I avoided getting strung out, but my professional life was really going well. I had managed to pitch a show to this entertainment company, and they gave me a contract and they gave me a big advance, and I thought I was on my way to incredible fame and fortune, and I thought I could handle being a heroin addict.
Would you say that your personal life was that annoying, and your business life was annoying?
I'd say my professional life was at a 9, and my personal life was at a 1, and my drug life was at around a 9. Annoying as well.
It's a Stern reference, sorry guys.
It's Mike. That's Gary Delabate, the way he pronounces 9.
Oh yeah, no, I'm familiar with Howard and all of that cast of characters.
So now your show is a lot like, you talk a lot about alt recovery. I mean, I think I wanted to also get into like, well, the show is very different. Obviously, it's a completely different dynamic now, and you take a lot of shit for that on reviews and complaining fans. You know, usually when someone wants to hit you with some negative shit, they're usually saying something about like, oh, it used to be great, and then now it's all recovery and blah blah. And it's like, you know, it's called evolution for one thing, and it's for my money, it's a much better quality show, and it is just different. And like, how do you feel about that? You know, there's the kind of criticism you get, and you also get praise for it.
There's a lot of stuff that goes on. Like it's an emotional thing. You know, like I think the best thing about the This American Life piece, the best moment in it for me was, you know, because before Chris died, my very, very, very close friend Todd died. He died 6 weeks before Chris died. And I think after Todd died, I was totally fucked up. And I could not do the show in the same way. It was over. When Todd died, that part of the show ended. And Chris was using, you know, and I didn't know he was using. And he wanted to keep doing shtick in the same way that we did. And I was too traumatized by Todd's death to do that. Like, it was over. So I think the show really changed when Todd died, because I couldn't do the show the same way anymore. And then when Chris died, like, there was no going back, because the whole show with me and Chris was me and Chris. So if Chris isn't there, like, that's the most frustrating thing. I mean, like, I take all those bad reviews very personally because I'm incredibly sensitive and insecure. But the fact of the matter is, I mean, I'd also say 9 out of 10 of the bad reviews come from the section of the audience that uses, and
right.
And you can kind of feel that, you know, and that was like, it was another big shift in the show, is that kind of after Chris died, I mean, I remember right after Chris died, I was getting these emails. There was this crazy guy who was definitely using, writing me these mean messages about the show. And I think it was because he was using, and he wanted to feel like it was okay. And it wasn't okay on the show to keep going the same way. So I think a lot of people felt abandoned because the let your freak flag fly aspect of Dopey had changed. But there was nothing I could do about it. You know, it's like, I mean, unless I was going to pretend that people using drugs didn't bother me after my 2 best friends died. Because it did. You know, so I just had to be, you know, it was hard. And the show was very depressing, I think, for a while. And it was hard to have a show that was fun and funny when, you know, the guy who started it had just died about the thing we had always been funny about. Yeah. That's a hard dynamic to carry. But nowadays, I'm finally kind of at peace with the fact that people write that because they love Chris and they love our dynamic, and there's nothing I can do about it. I think also we just surpassed the number of episodes that Chris and I did together that I've done without him. So, like, I think I'm just finally getting used to it, and I think I'm better at accepting the criticism now.
I mean, you're in a very interesting space, you know, given what you just said, because, I mean, a lot of your recent guests seem like they've been proponents of the California sober lifestyle, shall we say, or been proponents of weed smoking, at least like the last 3 or 4 that I listened to.
You're exaggerating. I think just Dog the Bounty Hunter and Jessica Kent. Nobody, I don't think we had. Oh, and Misty.
Yeah. Well, that's the last 3. So
that's true. Right, that's true.
So
3 out of 4.
I mean, you know, so that must sit kind of strange with you. And I mean, the whole idea of the Dopey Nation is a little interesting because you didn't create that group, right? I mean, it sort of sprang up out of the fans of the podcast in and of itself.
To support, I think it was after Chris's passing, I think is when it really galvanized. I think I heard you say that more than once.
What happened was, I was doing like a character on the show with Chris, and I was trying to be like a preacher, and I'd be like, "Stay strong, Dopey Nation," like it was a joke. And then all of a sudden, people were like, "I'm in the Dopey Nation. I'm in the Dopey Nation," and then we would refer to the audience as the Dopey Nation after that. And Chris and I, like, we always had people who would be like, "Dave sucks. I like Chris. I'm Team Dave. Chris sucks."
Right.
And like, I wasn't good at that stuff. Like, that stuff always bothered me. So we never set up a fan page because I didn't want to deal with that. It just seemed like it would create dynamics that I couldn't deal with because I take things too personally. And I knew that it affected Chris also. I just didn't want to do that. But then after he died, a bunch of the listeners were like, "Can we set up a Dopey Nation fan page?" And I was like, because they needed to mourn him together, because like all these people that were so connected to Chris, like they would tell their boyfriend or their wife or their husband, "Oh, the guy on my podcast died," and nobody would understand what that meant. It's
Right.
like, so what? But like all these people who had this connection to Chris, once they started a group, they could mourn him together. So that's where the Dopey Nation was galvanized, like you said, Nat. And in terms of this California sober business, it's like, I think for a long time, I was very resistant to telling any story that wasn't just about abstinence, because I was scared like that we would give somebody the wrong idea. But I think that addiction is it's not just about on or off. It's not just binary. And I think that if I want the show to exist, we need a healthy diet of different topics and different guests who have different opinions. And they know, the audience knows that I'm abstinent and I work a 12-step program. I think it's important because that can't work. I mean, like, honestly, I think that a 12-step program can work for everybody, but what it can't do is it cannot work for anybody that doesn't want to do it. So I respect that. I respect that not everybody wants to do it, and that if you don't want to do it, you basically can't do it. So you need to find another way. And I'm open to exploring what that looks like.
Yeah, and that you touched on a little bit about how 12-step has become, a big part of your recovery. And I have to say, for me as a listener, I have struggled and continue to struggle with AA and what I went through in my early days in AA, the things I hear people in AA say, and the way they treat other people, and all of that. And honestly, I had resolved to never go back and to never ever again subject myself to the kind of shame that I felt when I was there. However, once I heard that Dopey Dave was starting to do it, and the way that I could hear the change in your voice and how much better you were doing, it actually got me to kind of want to revisit going to AA meetings. And I even fantasized about one day, maybe I could get to an AA meeting with Dave, like go down to I'm like, how am I going to bring that one up? That's going to be awkward. But I figured if I do it in the show, it'll be a little easier. But I was just thinking though, like it makes me want to revisit AA. And I think that's a good thing, especially the way I think of AA now, the way I incorporate it into my program, is that I still read AA literature. I still engage in AA and 12-step, thinking and Zoom meetings, and that brings us also to the fact that Dopey Nation has started what are kind of like 12-step meetings through Dopey Zoom. I mean, they even do a big book study, and I think that's great. It's like a softer, more loving version of what AA maybe should have been.
Yeah, I mean, I'm in awe of the Dopey Nation and the stuff that they do, and it's like I cannot. The pride I have, and the appreciation I have for those guys who are so committed to this community. It's like it blows me away. And then as for 12-step recovery, like I don't think about the people. I don't care about the people involved with it. What I like about 12-step recovery is it sets up a very, very simple way for me to do the next right thing. You know what I mean? Like it's like if you asked me to build a desk, I would not really know how to build a desk. But if you gave me a desk from IKEA that had 12 steps on how to make a desk, I would have a desk. And I find that with 12-step, like the thing that I love about 12-step is that the bottom line is that love and tolerance is their code. And I love that. I love the idea of having a moral compass. I needed spirituality. I didn't have spirituality. And it taught me a way to use spirituality in my life. And it's like, I don't get caught up with the people at 12-step meetings at all. Like, I barely fellowship. I don't get caught up with stuff. If I don't like it, I just don't listen to it.
Mm-hmm.
I like I see it all strictly as tools to be happy, joyous, and free. And I hate the culty aspect, and I hate even sounding culty, but it is literally just a tool that gives me more freedom. You know, that's it.
Yeah.
That's why I do it. You know, that's it.
Well, it works for a lot of people. And the people for whom it works, it tends to work very well. But, you know, to carry on that IKEA analogy, there's some people that just cannot follow those instructions.
They don't, because if the instructions are at Japanese and you speak English,
you're going to get instructions for a dresser, but you're going to end up with like an end table or something if you follow them.
Right. Well, I mean, like, I don't mind using a dresser for an end table, but also, like, you're right. It's like, there's so many, I hate all the cliches. I hate everything about it except that it works. And it only works if you actually do it. If you do it, it really works. And the more you do it, the better it works. And if you don't do it, it doesn't work. And I think, you know, when Chris was alive, I loved to make fun of people on medicated assisted treatment because I had been on medicated assisted treatment for so long. And I remember I was living in Los Angeles and I was on methadone and I had a therapist, right? And the therapist would kind of go through my day. And my day would involve waking up at 5 a.m, spending whatever money I had on heroin and pills, coming home, shooting whatever heroin I had, taking the pills, smoking whatever weed I had, and then going to the methadone clinic, taking 150 milligrams of methadone, and then going to the therapist, and the therapist telling me that I was participating in harm reduction. And I was like, that sounds great. I was like, yeah, I love harm reduction. Harm reduction gets me so high. I love it. And so that was my philosophy when we would discuss it, which was, in my mind, there was no way I could use medicated assisted treatment and not go balls to the wall getting high. There was no methadone without Xanax. There was no Xanax without weed. And there was no all of it without whatever other money I could spend on heroin when I could spend it. So that was my experience. So I just talked about my experience, not thinking just like with you guys, like you're saying, when 12-step doesn't work for someone, it's like harm reduction didn't work for me. So I assume it couldn't work for anyone. Mm-hmm. But then Chris died and I didn't want to be a dick on the show. And so many people were on methadone or Suboxone or weed or whatever they were doing. And I love the community of the Dopey Nation. And really, when it comes down to it, if love and tolerance is my code, I need to have love and tolerance for these people and realize that there isn't just one shoe for every foot, and that anything anyone does to have a positive life and a happy experience, I support. And I kind of just hammered that home a bunch of times. And we got an email from this woman in New Hampshire. Her name was Jamie, and she was on methadone and she was smoking weed. And she said she never felt connected to recovery until she listened to Dopey. And she thanked me for Dopey being at the vanguard of the alt recovery movement, is what she said. And I was like, holy shit, we're at the vanguard of the alt recovery movement. And I was like, this is great. So I talked about it with Sam, who helps me make the show. He produces the show with me. I talked about it with everybody I knew around recovery. And we kind of just came to this place that said the alt recovery movement basically says, because Sam doesn't work a 12-step program and he's in recovery. And he has a lot of resentment against the 12 steps. Mm-hmm. And I know a lot of people that do.
Yes, they do.
So the alt recovery program says there are an infinite ways, a number of ways to get sober. It's all about practicing something as a replacement for the addiction. It's about pursuing some positivity in your life that takes you away from the misery which is addiction. And that's the concept of alt recovery. It's the inclusiveness where all the freaks are welcome. You can just smoke weed. You can be strung out on heroin. You can be on methadone, and we will take you in to lead you to someplace better.
Meeting them where they are. And one of the things I'm starting to see as I evolve in my sobriety is that I am a very different person in more than one way now than I was when I first got clean. And the maturity is something that doesn't get talked about in recovery. Whereas today, perhaps harm reduction, if I approached it from I feel like an adult, where I didn't 3 years ago. So, I mean, I'm not like, things are definitely different now. And maybe it would be possible now that I'd like to say we've grown up. I've left my perpetual adolescence, and that now it could be possible, to engage in something like, some kind of harm reduction if necessary, if you need it. But I mean, when we were having this discussion about This Naked Mind, you and I when we were talking about Annie coming on the show. And the point I think that you were making was, how is this going to help somebody who's got like right in the middle of their chaos and their sickness? Like, are they going to be able to read this book and then cognitively, change their ways? And my answer was, of course not. I think when you have it's like triage, when you're super bad and things are like horrible, you're out of your mind, get to a hospital detox. This is what I say, and I'm not a doctor, but I'd say hospital detox, inpatient rehab, outpatient with 12-step. Do that for 6 months to 2 years or something, and then you can start really using your mind a little more. At that point, you can graduate. I know people don't ever graduate from AA, and I'm not saying that, but I think cognitively, you're in a place where you can actually study, like, what does alcohol really do for me? I mean, is it really something that is going to be a reward like I used to think? And once you can really know when your inner addict is finally not telling you deserve a beer or you deserve a line, I think that's passing a threshold of maturity that is part of recovery. That I don't think that gets talked about.
No, I don't disagree with that. I think that the hard thing about your sporting goods store owning doctor's advice is the difficult part about it is that if you tell someone you need to go to the detox, yes, go to detox. You need detox, but then you say you need to be in program for 2 years. It's all of a sudden 2 years is like a billion miles away. Mm-hmm. So it's really just about like, what the fuck do I do today? And that's like, that's where I like to, I don't know. I know that when I was first getting well, getting through the day was the miracle. Like, and I remember I would go to sleep. I would go to bed early so I didn't have to sit up, and just so I could wake up the next day and be like, okay, that day's over. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
It's just the day. But Mike, I want to ask you something. How Meshuggah and stupid do you think alt recovery sounds to you, or do you like the idea of it?
I love the idea of alt recovery. I think you have to meet people where they are, and I don't think there's a one size fits all. My personal feeling is that AA, like I said, works well or that the sort of 12-step based program works well for the people it works for. But there are just people that are it's funny about the statistics with AA and NA. You don't how are they really coming up with those statistics? Because the people that tend to be most vocal in support of the programs are the ones that the programs are successful for.
Right, exactly.
And everybody else you don't hear from them.
Right. Because they're either dead or they're still using.
Right. But I do agree with you, Dave, that you can't, when you're first coming around, you cannot plan out 3 years of recovery. Straight ahead.
I couldn't even plan out 3 days.
No.
Or 3 hours. It was like, oh my God, the beginning.
I mean, I'm in favor of harm reduction. I practice an abstinence-based recovery myself because I've gotten to the point where I don't want to have my consciousness altered in any way. I prefer to be a life on life's terms
because you're happy now.
to borrow a term. Yeah, I mean, I am. And but I'm not a 12-step person. I was in the 90s. I tried with AA, yes, more than once, more than 10 times.
What, and it didn't cure you?
Didn't cure me then.
That's so weird.
Yeah, but
there's no cure.
Well, right. That was an artful term. I don't think I was really looking to be cured. But what I have found over the last 2 years is that the further away I get from altering my consciousness in any way, and I put weed on that same table for me, I can see things with much more clarity, and then that's when the inner work begins, right? When you're able to think clearly.
Huh. So would you say that you've recovered from a seemingly hopeless state of mind, body, and soul?
I don't know.
Well, that's how I feel. Yeah. I think, Dave, is that how you feel? Have you recovered from a seemingly hopeless state?
Absolutely not. I'm always recovering. That was something Chris used to joke about, that he was recovered, and it's like it haunts me, to this day. And like, again, I'm not like waving a 12-step flag. I'm only saying that doing the work works. It works for me.
It works if you work it. So work it, you're worth it.
But I don't even mean it in that way. It's like for example, right? I went to meetings for years, and I'd hear people talk about praying and meditation, and I really thought they were trying to sound cool, and I really thought they were trying to like fetishize God and religion and spirituality like they were cool, right? And only recently did I really start a spiritual practice, and it's just made my life so much better. But it's not about like having this beautiful experience. It's literally about doing something that makes me less crazy, that makes me more happy. It's not about anything besides tools. It's just tools. Like, that's how I see the whole thing now. And I do it strictly so that I'm less of a dick, so that I'm more open, so that I can get more shit done. Like, I love drugs. I love drugs. I love getting high so much. But I just think that, like, let's say even with weed, it's like I make jokes on the show all the time about, like, wishing I could still smoke pot. But the truth is that I can smoke pot. And if I smoke pot, I don't want to risk what I've earned. You know what I mean? I don't want to risk the life that I've given myself, over the past 5.5 years. And like, I just don't see weed adding anything to my life.
Right.
I just see weed as reducing my ability to do the shit I'm doing now. Like, I love doing the shit I'm doing, and I would hate for something to inhibit my ability.
That's exactly how I feel about it. But the spirituality piece is pretty interesting, because for me, I kind of backed into it. I mean, I've always been a bit of a Buddhist, and I sat with some Zen groups.
Always been a bit of a Buddhist.
But the problem is, when you're drinking every day, it's very hard to meditate.
That's true.
So for the last couple of years, I've gone back into meditating every day, and it really is an important part of leveling me out and making me a better person. I don't know really if I consider it as part of recovery, though, because I had stopped using any substance, and then I started back with meditation and spiritual practice, and it's made me a better person.
Well, that's what recovery is, I think.
Well, I guess maybe that's the issue, life, right?
And that was a point I wanted to make, but I forgot in the middle of thinking about it while we were talking. But it's that, for me, recovering and being sober is much more than just I don't drink anymore.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't take any substances that are banned or blah blah blah. For me, it's, are you trying to make your life better? Is your life better? And whatever that means, and I mean, I think we know from experience that making your life better usually doesn't mean smoking pot all day, but if you're doing, meth for 6 years and you get off of it and start smoking marijuana, maybe however much a day, that's a better life, right? Maybe it's not sober, but I consider that, especially if you're working actively and daily toward that, making your life better, that is recovery to me. That is recovering from this life that nearly killed killed me and nearly killed and did kill many of us. And so that's kind of the angle that I'm looking at recovery right now. It's less of, did you go to X number of meetings? Did you call your sponsor every day? I mean, it's not about that for me. It's just am I making my life better each and every day? And what am I doing for my recovery?
So your whole life is a manifestation of your recovery.
100%. I don't separate it. Right.
I think that it's all like a semantical thing. You know what I mean? Like I've been meditating every day for, I think about a month or maybe 2 months, and I love it. Is it part of my recovery? Maybe. It's definitely part of my life. And then you have, and this is going to be somewhere out of left field, but I think this is like my belief about it. It's like Bob Marley. He was a Rasta. He was a songwriter. He was a musician, and he would say that when he smoked pot, it would be his meditation. And I am not going to sit here and tell you that Bob Marley wasn't meditating when he smoked weed, and because probably the greatest songs that were ever written came out in Bob Marley's weed meditation and all these Rastas' weed meditation. And I will not begrudge anybody's joy doing anything. It's just about my life. And my life doesn't have room for it because I was such a fucking disaster, even just as a stoner. I was not writing fucking the records that Bob Marley was writing. I was watching TV and eating ice cream. That's what I was doing, but I will not begrudge the greatness that was Bob Marley or Paul McCartney or Jimi Hendrix or whoever that found success and productivity doing something, or I won't begrudge anybody who's an addict, like you said, like that was a meth addict that switched to weed and they found joy. Like, do your thing. You know what I mean? Like, because the second that I'm imposing my belief on someone else, that's the second that I'm not happy, joyous, and free.
Right.
That's the second that I'm doing something that's not fucking cool.
You had a really great quote. I forget exactly who you were talking to. It might have been it was that girl that you were talking to who is really, she's got a big... Right. And you said something that really stuck out to me as like a brilliant insight, I'll say. And
Thank God.
Yes. You said, I'm comfortable with your happiness.
Yes. I remember that.
Man, did I write that down and say, yeah, man, that's like, that's it right there in a nutshell. When you said that.
Well, I think you saying that makes me feel very good about myself, first of all. But secondly, I think the second that I could be comfortable with Jessica Kent's happiness was like the first moment that I could be comfortable with my own happiness.
Booyah.
Like that my shit was not in its normal, envious, bullshit, jealous place. That my life was finally good enough that I could be like, you do what you do.
Right, man.
As long as you're happy, that's cool with me because I'm actually finally happy.
Right on.
That's it.
Which is weird.
I mean, I remember I used to walk around with a wretched hangover, and I'd see people just walking by me with a smile on my face, and I'd be like, "What the fuck is wrong with them?
Yeah, what's wrong with you?"
I mean, you can't be happy for other people until you're happy with yourself.
So I wanted to actually, Dave's up against another. He's got a meeting coming up, and I wanted to before we finished. I want to talk about where do you see Dopey going? What's next for you? Is there a book that in the works called "It Was the Least I Could Do"? Are you looking at TV, films? What's up next for Dopey and the Dopey Nation?
Well, Dopey is just going to keep going. Like I'm just going to keep putting out shows, and I have this idea like that. I'm just always trying to concoct a way to get more. All I ever want is more. So my recovery is not. That's why I'm not recovered, because all I want is more all the time. and like I'm just always trying to concoct and weasel and plan like how I can get more. And I've always wanted to write a book. And I feel like if I had a memoir, maybe that would make Dopey bigger. And I would have a memoir and people would like to read my book and I would make something else. I also think that if I wrote a book, maybe it could be turned into a TV show. Like after the This American Life piece, they approached me about doing a film about the This American Life piece. And I was like, sure, whatever. And nothing ever came from it. And I tried to write a script. and I just found myself writing a script about my life, and it felt really weird. And I was like, I should just write a memoir, and then if we can adapt that into a script, that would be something. I also always dreamed of having a show that was kind of like half Howard Stern show, half Regis and Kathy Lee show, which was like a couple of addicts sitting around the kitchen doing Dopey. You know what I mean? Like a television talk show. Random bits. So like that's one of my dreams. But for now, and then the other thing is that I've gotten to this place in my mind where I have this day job working at this deli that is, it pays for my family, but I don't see it being a sustainable job as I get into my 50s and 60s. So I'm thinking about going back to school as a kind of backup, like some kind of therapy job, get a master's in therapy. And so, because I know I could be an old therapist with an office and Jimi Hendrix posters.
I fantasize about that too, man. Like, I want to get my master's in social work or something. I think that would be great, man. We're really excited.
Just as a backup.
Yep. Yeah, I know. I mean, and one thing I would recommend is that you get a really good marketing strategist who can help you shape and mold, the way that you're reaching out and getting more listeners. And I think you should do that for sure.
I think the most important thing is that said marketing strategist can distinguish between monthly downloads overall and episode downloads per month.
Yes.
That's the strategist that I'm trying to find.
If I meet someone, I'll tell you.
Dude, my dream burns inside of me. Like the dream that Dopey's like a fucking tiny podcast in the wake of gigantic podcasts, but we have a little audience, and I dream of turning it into a brand that really successfully marries entertainment and addiction with recovery and drug addiction and dumb shit and all that stuff built in. Like I dream of Dopey being bigger. Dopey is the band I always wanted. Yeah. And I wake up in the morning thinking about it, and I go to bed thinking about it, and I dream about it, and I'm invested,
Well, I mean, I'm looking forward to what Dopey can be, and I'm excited just to be a part of it. And the fact that you even take any advice from me at all is a
very suspect of my ability.
It's very strange to me.
I'm like, how did I convince this guy to give me access to his data? But no, it means we have a lot of fun, and I want to thank you, Dave, so much for doing this show. It was definitely a little dream of mine. And
thanks for your time. We really appreciate it.
I have always. I've always wanted to take you out on the Dopey Nation and say those last few words that you always say on the show, and I'd like to do that today, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, man, sure.
Stay strong, Dopey Nation, and fucking toodles for Chris. Thank you so much, Dave, and we hope to get you on again soon.
Yeah, man, I live very close by. Thank you guys so much. It was a lot of fun.
Thanks a lot,
I love
Dave.
talking about the show. Thank you guys.
Yes.
So long.
Right. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Later.
That was awesome.
Yeah. Wow. Dream come true. And I can't wait to hear reactions to that. It was just a really great interview, I thought.
Yeah,
and,
we went pretty deep, man.
Yeah, I feel good about it. We're going to wrap up the show, actually, guys, if you're even still out there. And
it's a long one.
It was a long one, so we're going to withhold the recovery in the news today and Paranormal Minute or whatever we call it.
We'll do it next week.
And visit us at middleagesrecovery.com. Join the discussion on our exclusive and private Facebook group. If you need to talk, don't hesitate to reach out to us on social media. Check out our show notes. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. Tweet us at twat, you twit. I've been twittering more.
You have been.
I am. I'm trying. Apple Podcasts is where you can give us a review. So if you go to the Apple Podcast app, and please do this. 5 stars, and then write something that makes me feel good about myself and something that makes Mike feel good about himself.
Yes.
And it'll keep us clean another week. New merch
That's
is
great.
available.
You should say that often.
It's guilt.
Yes.
Guilt and
right.
anxiety, panic, and guilt is the three pillars by which
the
I
driving
build.
force of our lives.
Message us about merch and stuff like that. And as we say, non proficiat perfectum.
Progress, not perfection.
See you next week.
Be good, guys. Bye.